Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be using Apple Notes to plan a trip. Let's have a look. The key components of this trip planner are this one, the overview page, which is one of the most important, where you can see the map of my trip, but more importantly, this table, which acts as a monthly calendar. So I know exactly at a glance where I'm supposed to be when. So on Tuesday the 2nd, I'll be in London, I'm going to stay a couple of days, and then I move to Paris on the 4th, and then I move to Germany, to Cologne on the 7th, and so on. And then this table is linked to the other main component of my trip planner, which is the individual notes that cover specific legs of my trip. So on the 2nd, for example, I'm going to be in London, and this note contains everything that I need to know to get there, so the transportation, accommodation, things to do, and so on. And I'm going to use this note also to record things that I've done in London. For example, how much I've spent, my day note, which is, like a diary or a journal of my trip. And then I've got a section for city infos, which can contain pretty much anything that I discovered during my research. In this case, I've dragged in a tube map. More components of the trip planner are these additional notes. One is for packing stuff, so it's a packing list really, so that we are sure we're not going to forget anything. A list of things to do while we are away, and this is useful for a house sitter, for example, someone looking after your stuff. Another note for ideas for the next trips. And then we've got one very important note, which is about emergency, insurance, and anything that could be related to that aspect of your trip. Okay, so let's go back to the main component of this trip planner, which is the overview page. I want to give you just an idea of how to create this table, because Apple Notes doesn't work too well with tables. So I'm going to give you a few suggestions. I'm going to recreate the same table here just for demonstration purpose. So the first thing to do is to add a table. I'm going to add one here by clicking on this symbol here, which, as you can see, gives you a 2x2 table. In our case, we need 7 columns for the days of the week. So you can either click on the header here and add a column after, which is time-consuming, or you're going to be using a very quick shortcut, if you're working on your computer, of course, which is Command, Option, right arrow. And this creates a new column. So you can repeat that, and when you get to 7, you've got your 7 columns. Now you can give names to those headers, like the days of the week. If you're American, you'll probably start on a Sunday. In my case, I start on a Monday. So I'm going to say Monday, and then I press Tab to move to the next cell. Tuesday, Tab, Wednesday, Tab, Thursday, Tab, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I've got my 7 columns. By the way, I can drag my mouse across and press Command B to make everything bold. Now I need the numbers for the days. So let's say this month starts with Monday on the 1st of the month, so this will be 1st. And then I can click on the Tab key to move to the next cell and type 2. And I'm going to repeat the process for these days. And if I keep pressing Tab, a new row will be created for me. Now I can continue with this process. So 8, 9, 10, I'm going to speed this up and complete it. So in this case, I've assumed that this month has 31 days. Of course, you can progress with this table if you are going to stay away for longer than 1 month, or maybe make it shorter. Now, the next thing you want to do is to make more space so you can write in those cells. And the thing you can do, if you go to your, let's say, cell number 1, and you want to add some extra space, like I did here, what you need to do is to press Option and Return. And this creates a new line in that cell. Because if you only press Return, you move to the next cell. which is something you don't want. So if I go back to the cell number 8, I press Option Return again, and then I've created some more space. Then I press Return to move to the next cell, arrow, and then Option Return. Same here, and same here. Once I've got my monthly calendar, which takes less than a minute to create, I can then go in and I can start writing where I'm going to be at on those days. I can then go in and write down where I'm going to be at on those days. So let's say, for example, on Tuesday the 2nd, I am supposed to be in London. So I'm going to press Option Return to move to the next line, and I'm going to type in London. On the 4th, again, Option Return, I was going to be in Paris, and so on. Okay, now I can create a note for the 2nd of September, like this one that I've created for London. In order to do this, I've done a few things, as you can see here. I've given this a name, and I've created it using the title format. Then I've got a link here, and I'm going to get back to this in a second. Then I've added a picture, which I've taken from the internet, and then a series of dividers, which I've created in a separate program, and I've just dragged in. These dividers, by the way, can be downloaded for free if you want to use them, just as a way to save you time. Check the link in the description below to discover how. And in these various sections, I've got some details about that specific section. For example, in terms of transport, I know that in order to be in London on the 2nd of that month, I need to take the Eurostar. This is the departure time. It's going to gets to London at 15:55 on that day. I've got a code for my reservation. I've got some seats and the coach number and so on. And then, as you can see here, there is a link. And this is the link that points to the email where I've got the confirmation for these tickets. In order to bring an email into your Apple Notes, you can simply take your mail program. You've got this email maybe from Trainline, which confirms your reservation, and you simply get it from here, you click, and you drag it to the section you want it to be in. In this case, it's going to be this one. And when I release, it's going to be here. So every time I click on this link, this email will be open for me. And if I've got my booking reference, maybe a QR code or whatever, it's always going to be available. By the way, if the title is too long or it doesn't make sense to you, you can click on it or right-click on it, select Edit Link, and you can change the name shown to whatever you want. So I can simply call it Booking Number. And when I click OK, the name will be changed. And there is a tab here. I can press tab on my keyboard to move everything and align everything. And for the accommodation section, I've done exactly the same. I've got this booking, Hotel Pullman in King's Cross. That's fine. And I've dragged in the email with the booking confirmation. So you see, everything is centralized. When I'm in London, I only have to look at one note to have everything that I need about that city. In the what to do section, I tend to write a list of things that I want to do when I'm in the city. So in this case, I've got 3 items, but of course, if I go to the end of the last one and I press return, a new item will be created for me and I can type something else. For the next section, it's something I always like to track, and it's my expenses. Now, I've got a currency conversion, British pound to euro, but normally I would write down at the end of every single day the date, what I've spent my money on, and how much I've spent. And this, at the end of my trip, can be either imported into my overall expense tracker, which I've already described on this channel, by the way, or it can stay there as a memory of the things that I've done in London, especially when you think of the next section, which is day notes, which is really like a little journal, a description of the things that I've done, or it could even be a mixture between descriptions, so like a journal, and photos and videos. Because at the end of your trip, you could either move these things to your forever diary if you're using it, or whatever journal you're using, or you could leave everything into this note, which will contain years down the line a memory of everything you've done in London, the train you took, the hotel you stayed at, the things you did, and your thoughts about that trip. The last section is actually very useful, and it's probably the place where you're going to put the majority of your research. Things that you want to see, things that you want to remember, maybe ideas for things to do on specific situations. For example, rainy days. What are we going to do during rainy days? You could have a list or maybe a link to a website. In this case, what I've dragged in is a tube map. I've downloaded a PDF from the TfL website, and I've dragged it just as I did drag in the email. So this tube map I can use by clicking on the header here and tapping the space bar, which will give me the preview of the file. I can decide to make it smaller, maybe view as a medium file, for example. And that may be useful if you add lots of things to this page, just to avoid scrolling forever. And I can use it maybe also, as you can see here, to mark up some locations on the map, or maybe to take notes about something that I don't want to forget. To do this, you just select to mark it up. As you can see here at the top, as I said, I've got a link to get back to the overview. So when I click on this link, I will go back to my previous page where I got my table. Now let's get back to the overview so I can show you another couple of interesting things. And I'm going to remove this part of the table because we don't need it anymore. So let's say I've created my page for my stay in London, which contains all the information that I need, my page for Paris, and so on. I need a quick way to move from the table to the actual page. And that way is links. So in order to do that, I just select the word London, I right-click, and I click on Add Link. The shortcut for this is Command K. When I click Add Link, I can then look for my note by typing the first letters of my note. In this case, it's 2nd September, which is this note here. And when I click, the link will be formed. London is my text for the link, which is okay for me, and then I click OK. So as you can see, it's now underlined. And when I click on it, my note about London is going to be opened. And I can see everything that I need to know about moving to London, so my transportation, accommodation, things to do, and so on. And that is why I've also created a link to go back to overview, because in Apple Notes, the navigation between notes is not as good as it should be. So you can move from the overview to the London page, but there is no immediate way to go back. So you can create your own backlinks. And I've created this link back to the overview using the same principle. You can type something and then click Command K to create a link. Or there is a shortcut, which I love to use, which is typing 2 greater than signs, and then start typing the first few letters of the page that you want to connect to. In this case, overview is here. And when I click on it, I'm going to go back exactly to my overview page. So I've got links to London, which we've just created. Then I've got a link to Paris, which links here to the same page. So you can see how easy it is, once you've created your overview and your single specific pages, to connect the two, so that you're always just one click away from where you want to be. Now, let's quickly review the other pages that I've got in my trip planner. First is the packing list. It's a very important thing to make sure you don't forget anything. As you can see here, I've created a few sections. I've added icons just for visual interest. And I've started jotting down in a list format the things that I want to bring with me. And every time I put something in my luggage, I can obviously check them off. By the way, you can do all these things using keyboard shortcuts. For example, you can press Command-Shift-L for list to create a new list instead of having to click on this icon. And more importantly, you can press Command-Shift-U to complete an item on your list. Just another thing here. As you can see here, I've got one item which contains sub-items. To create this sort of nested list, you create a standard list, and then you, from this row, you press your tab key on your computer. Or maybe if you're on your iPhone, you slide left or right to indent things. If I press tab, this will indent it. If I press shift tab, it will outdent it. One important thing, one interesting shortcut, which is only available on your Mac really, is that you can move entire sections like this, where you've got one list item and all its sub-items in one go by using a shortcut. Because look at what happens. If you try to move an item, like in this case, I can click and drag and move it here, it's only going to move one line, and it's going to leave the sub-items where they were. But if I undo this, I go on the medicine line, and then I press the keyboard combination, which is Command, Control, and then arrow up. As you can see, the entire section with the nested items will move, which is very useful if you want to move things around and they include many nested list items. The other thing that may be useful is how I managed to change the color of this thing. And this you can do it by selecting a word, pressing Command-Shift-C, and that will display your color wheel. And then at this point, you can change the color by picking another one. Let's say this yellow. As you can see, medicines is now in this yellow banana color. Next item is things to do while you're away. This is the perfect place to collect instructions and reminders or whatever message you want to pass to the person that will look after your place while you're away. Maybe instructions on how to look after your pets, things to do in the house, how to water the plants, and so on. As you can see here, this is a set of numbered lists. By the way, to create a numbered list, the shortcut is Command-Shift-9. For example, how to deactivate the alarm, how to water the plants, how to look after your pets, what to do while you're away in general. For example, please collect all the mail from the mailbox so it's not immediately obvious that we're not home, and so on. One interesting thing you can do on this page is to collaborate with someone. So you can share the page, clicking on this button here and choosing the collaborate option with the person that looks after your place, provided they have an iPhone or a Mac or whatever. So you can both edit the list, collaborate on it, maybe clarify things or ask questions directly on this list. Ideas for next trips is just a simple note where we collect ideas that spring to our minds while we're traveling. And it could be as simple as always carry some tea bags with us, because sometimes in hotels you want a cup of tea and there are no tea bags. You may have a kettle, but no tea bags. Or maybe to bring small transparent Ziplocs bags for medicines. And more importantly, the third point, bring carabiners to secure luggage in trains. Because of something that happened to us in our last trip. We were on a train between Paris and Geneva, and it was a long trip, no stations in sight, so we'd been going for maybe a couple of hours. And at some point, this girl was standing beside our seats, and we didn't pay too much attention because we thought she was looking outside of the window, maybe at the scenery, which is beautiful, by the way, in that region. So she went away, and 5 minutes later, she came back, took one of our bags, and walked off. And luckily, my partner spotted her and stopped her and questioned her, and it was clear that she was stealing it because she said something like, "Oh, no, I wanted to grab it because someone told me to take it," which, just didn't make any sense. But the reality is we realized that she could have taken our luggage in just 20 seconds, and we wouldn't have realized. So we thought, next time, let's bring some carabiners. So when we put all of our luggage above our heads, we can link everything to each other. So if someone takes one piece, they will drag down everything else, and hopefully that will give us enough information to spot that someone is stealing our stuff. Last but not least, this very important file is about emergencies. And it contains anything that could be useful in case of an emergency. So from the emergency from the emergency services, which by the way are the number 112 is active across the European Union to call the police or an ambulance or whatever emergency service. Maybe if you got travel insurance, you may have the number you need to call in case of problems, your insurance number, your expiry dates, and any bits of information that could be useful, and maybe a list of numbers for your local embassy across the countries you're going to visit. So again, it's just a way of having important information in just one place. If you want to know how I created those colorful headers, have a look at this video. For now, this is everything. Enjoy your trip planner, enjoy your trips, and see you soon.